Welcome aboard the Airship Sweet Chariot. Next stop, Blacktastic, the Black Science Fiction and Fantasy Podcast. Our first story is An Omnibus Ride in Scarlet by Balogun Ojetade from the Rococo Anthology.
The warm, stolid air in the old, rickety red omnibus stank strongly of absinthe and vomit. The gears and the weights that ran the bus strained against the tremendous combined weight of its 16 passengers.
These cattle must learn to bathe.
To one such as her, the smell was far worse than to inferior human nostrils. Her heightened senses had come in handy many times in the past, even saving her from destruction on the one occasion when the hunters had come creeping. But on other occasions, like tonight, she would give her 2 big toes for a set of nose plugs.
Here we go.
Having finished a run for Samuel, Master Samuel, his enslaved Africans were made to call him, the man now waited patiently in the cold, dark night at the omnibus stop. He hated riding the iron and wood monstrosity. Being a black man, he was not supposed to ride the vehicle at all, but his so-called owner was powerful, so he was allowed to ride in the omnibus's undercarriage with the luggage.
How do, sir?
Get on there, boy. We gotta go.
Yes, sir.
The undercarriage was devoid of light and circulation. It reeked of mildew and old leather. The man sat, cross-legged in the darkness.
Sir? Is something wrong?
Forgive me, sir. You can ride inside the bus.
Leroy poked his head out of the undercarriage and studied his surroundings, ensuring no mob waited on the road with a noose. Certain of his safety, he slid out of the undercarriage, hopped to his feet, and followed the driver into the omnibus. The omnibus was packed. No one seemed to notice him, though. The sole black man on a whites-only omnibus. He shrugged and scanned the vehicle for an empty seat. Luckily, he spotted one in the middle of the omnibus, next to an elderly man with dead eyes that rolled around in their sockets. Good, the old man was blind. He should be okay and be able to avoid any unwanted confrontation as long as he kept his head down. He shuffled to his seat and sat down, staring at the floor. There wasn't much to see on the floor, just scuffed wood, but it didn't matter. He kept his gaze downward. This way, with any luck, no one would bother him. As the omnibus continued on, the aches and pains of a long day's work were massaged by the omnibus's slow rocking gait. Leroy's eyelids fluttered and then closed as he drifted off into a wild and troubled sleep.
Hello there.
Huh?
You from around here, are you?
The man, now fully awake, realized that someone had come and sat by him while he slept. The blind man was gone, and somehow this person had scooted by him and taken the window seat without rousing him. The voice, he quickly noted, belonged to a woman, a young white woman. This was bad. A black man on a whites-only omnibus sitting next to a white woman. He couldn't shrug this off.
Sorry, what? Yes, I live in Jerusalem.
I'm Claudia. I'm traveling to Jerusalem, too. I just moved here from Chicago. But enough about me. Tell me about yourself.
My name's Leroy, ma'am. Not much more to tell. I deliver messages, pick up packages, and shop for my master. And that's about it, really.
Come on, Leroy. There must be more to you than that. What excites you? What's inside the man sitting beside me? There must be more to you than just work. You're more than just some slave boy.
Well, I do have a few hobbies.
I'm intrigued. Tell me.
Well, I'm interested in the supernatural.
You mean ghosts?
Yes, ma'am. Ghosts, monsters, creatures from the black depths of the sea and from the blacker depths of space. People with extraordinary abilities and magic artifacts. I'm interested in it all.
Interesting. Tell me more.
There are things out there, things that walk our world, things we don't understand, things we were never meant to understand. In the last 15 years, I made it my personal mission to collect the things, oddities, and curiosities that we were never meant to see.
So you're telling me you know monsters and the like. This is fascinating, Leroy. And what's more, you've been collecting the evidence, building up a menagerie of proof. Incredible. Tell me more.
I'll tell you everything I know.
The vampire listened with faked interest as her prey ranted on.
Claudia May Brodus. You have really gone and picked a right one this time. He's black, a bit intelligent, and it seems a bit crazy. I suppose all slaves are at least a little crazy. They are, after all, away from home, abused and robbed of their culture. Enough to drive anyone mad.
Just this morning, just after Pearline had served Master his breakfast and slipped me the extra biscuit, a knock came at Master's door. This scruffy-looking man, who goes by the name of Lyman, tried to sell Master something in the dirty brown carrier bag that he called the great discarnate fundament of the undead Lord and Savior.
What?
Claudia was tempted to release her glamour on the passengers and driver and watch them tear Leroy apart for daring to sneak onto and defile their omnibus. But she wanted to drink his spirit, so she continued to keep everyone enthralled as she listened.
Lyman claimed that in 1776, giant monsters, demons the founding fathers called them, broke free from hell and stalked the colonies. Wherever the beasts roamed, towns and villages would crumble under their heels. So Lyman claimed the plan was formed by the founding fathers.
What did they do?
Benjamin Franklin created a giant rod, but not to attract lightning. This rod was built of materials that would attract power from the realm of spirit. He drove the rod into the head of a huge stone that sat in Pennsylvania's town square. It was a stone that was to be sculpted into a statue of General George Washington. The founding fathers fasted for a fortnight and then prayed around the stone for a day and a half. And lo and behold, a bolt of red lightning came down from the heavens and struck the giant stone. The big rock became soft like clay. It whirled and folded in upon itself. A few minutes later, a 100-foot tall stone Jesus Christ stood where the giant rock once was. Big Jesus plodded towards his demons, eager to do battle with the monsters. Things went well at first with the giant Jesus demolishing the monsters with his big holy fist of power. However, after each fight, giant Jesus got weaker and weaker until by the time only one terrible monster remained. Giant Jesus was barely able to stand on his two mighty divine legs, and this final monster was the biggest and most powerful of the bunch, attacked Big Jesus, all claws and fangs.
Claudia could not believe what she was hearing. As a vampire, she knew there were powerful spirits the Christians foolishly mistook as demons. She had even been called a demon or a devil once or twice. But giant Jesus? She was going to save a consuming Leroy. He was certainly a rarity in this land of dullards.
A terrible battle ensued, but in the end, the monster was killed and giant Jesus stood triumphant, his brilliant holy eyes shining with the light of the sun as the founding fathers fell to their knees and gave praise. Alas, though, giant Jesus had been dealt a mortal wound and died the next day as the colonists celebrated the fact that no more horrid monsters would eat them. For 3 days and 3 nights, the celebrations went on, but on the 4th day, a new terrible menace arose to once more threaten the colonies. Giant Jesus had come back to life, though now one of the undead, and he was hungry for brains.
Tell me more.
More terrible than all the monsters put together, giant undead Jesus went about killing and destroying all before him. Again, the founding fathers got together to come up with a solution for ridding the world of their terrible creation. They invented an immense grenado and fired it from a cannon at the giant undead Jesus. On impact, the grenado blew up and killed the undead giant Jesus. The only thing of undead Jesus to survive was his left buttock.
And you believe this story, do you?
Lyman was without a doubt quite mad, but he seemed a harmless soul nonetheless. When Master kicked him out of his house, I caught up with him and paid him 5 silver coins, half my savings for it.
For the left buttock of giant undead Jesus.
Yes. Look like we're here. It was a pleasure to meet someone else who has a mind for stranger things.
I'm staying not too far from here. It's dark. Would you be so kind as to escort me home?
Well, I don't know. Master expects I'll be home directly.
I'll pay you 10 silver coin for your trouble.
Well, in that case...
As the two started walking, Claudia knew that she had no place to stay in Jerusalem. She had planned to kill some old couple and take their home, but now she had a better idea. She needed to be invited back to Leroy's plantation. She would kill his master and take over the plantation, which would provide her with many slaves from which to drink. Hopefully they were all as exceptional as Leroy. She decided that if Leroy was going to invite her, then he needed a little push.
So, this collection of strange and unusual that you've amassed, it must be a wonderful thing to lay eyes upon.
I am mighty proud of it.
It would be easy for Claudia to enthrall him, but enthralled prey tasted better and left her with a terrible headache. She would do this the old-fashioned way. She batted her eyes.
I'd love to see it, Leroy.
Really? Well, okay. I was going to invite you back, but it's not the way.
The way?
Well, yes. A slave inviting a white woman to his plantation? I ain't trying to get myself whipped and burnt at the stake.
Oh, don't worry about that. Who will ever know? We can do whatever we like. I won't tell, if you won't.
Oh, okay then. Here we are. My cabin is over there. Go on in and make yourself at home. I just have to go tell Massa I'm back.
All right, but hurry back.
Claudia entered Leroy's cabin. She was happy with what she saw, a small one-bedroom cottage with a little garden at the front. There were other cabins on either side and behind it, but only a couple of them had the flickering of candlelight coming from their windows. On the walk to the plantation, they had not encountered anyone. Leroy had rambled on some more about his collection, but Claudia had been on the alert, her eyes constantly searching, hoping to see no other wandering souls. She was very pleased with the way things were going. On the mantelpiece, she noticed a jar with some small brown thing floating in it. The label read, "France the First Lost Nose." On another jar, containing a whitish liquid, a label read, "Ectoplasm," and a small glass box with a piece of brown, mouldy fur within was branded with the words, "Yeti Hair."
There's one thing you should know, Leroy.
What's that?
Yetis and ghosts and giant undead Jesuses don't exist. It's an altogether different type of undead that you need to worry about.
What? You mean wraiths? Revenants? By the way, ghosts aren't actually undead. They just dead, and...
With blinding speed, a deformed hand swung out, and with inhuman strength, slapped Leroy on the side of the head. The blow knocked him senseless, and he fell to the floor unmoving.
Enough of your prattle!
Claudia needed to act quickly now. Leroy would not stay unconscious long, and if he awoke too soon, a few more blows from her would finish him off before she could feast. When Leroy did awake, he found himself sitting in his rocking chair. The chair had been dragged into the center of the room. Before him, sitting in his dinner chair, was Claudia, grinning.
What? What happened?
He tried to stand up, but found that his legs and arms were tied.
You're robbing me? Is that it, Claudia? You want my collection of oddities? Take them.
Your collection? You actually think anybody with half a brain would be interested in your little collection? You really are a nigger. In all my years traveling this world, I've met some fools, believe me. I've met some of the stupidest, most ignorant pieces of walking feces to ever grace the planet. But you are the dumbest of the lot. Imaginative, but dumb. Entertaining, but dumb. Over the last hour that I've gotten to know you, I've really, really, really grown to hate you. And believe me, I am not someone that you want to piss off.
Listen, take what you want, just don't hurt me.
Oh, my dear Leroy, I intend on not only hurting you, but to skin you alive and to feed you your own flesh. Now, dearie, stop your struggling or rip off your nose and add it to that Franz the First jar to make a pair. Besides, you'll find it hard to escape. In my line of work, and over the past few hundred years, I have become something of the knot-tying expert. Still, though, I suppose I may as well take your collection up to the main house. I'll find a room for it. Tell me, Leroy, in all your time researching all that unbelievable nonsense that adorns your grim little hovel here, have you ever learned much about vampires?
Vampires? Well, I know a little. In fact, I once tried to buy a cane from a man in New Spain who claimed it was the very cane carried by the vampire Lord Ruthven.
Lord Ruthven is a fictional character from a book. Tell me, though, Leroy, if you believe in Lord Ruthven, then you must also believe in other vampires as well, right?
Yes.
Well, for once you'd be correct.
As Leroy sat tired and helpless, a horrible transformation began to take place before him. Claudia's eyes became large and cat-like. The white skin on her face faded and decayed to a deathly grey. Her face stretched downwards to accommodate a new set of huge, sharp teeth as two exaggerated fangs hung down past her chin. The rest of her body twisted and elongated as fingers became claws. Her torso and her neck stretched, making her weave and sway serpent-like. Now, in her true form, she gazed at the horrific little man before her as the hunger inside her grew. It was tempting to kill him right then and there, to eat his miserable soul and be done with it, but she planned on having her fun first. The food could wait just a little while longer. The loathsome terror before him reached out and grabbed Leroy's face with its claws.
Tell me, Leroy, I know you wanted me before.
Do you want me now?
You will answer me in words or in screams, understand? When I ask you a question, you will answer me or suffer. Do you understand?
When I'm dead, once you kill me, will I become like you?
We vampires are truly evil. Even when we existed as pathetic humans, our hearts and thoughts were of a design of pure wickedness. Franz I, for example, now he had potential. You, however, don't. You are a moron, a simpleton, a plain and simple nigger. Don't you dare suggest that a little nigger like you could ever become something like me. Vampires are of the noblest malevolence.
So that's a no then.
Come on, Leroy. Surely you must have learned something of my kind when investigating all that poppycock you love to drivel on about. What about, say, the way we eat? Not just on your blood like some overgrown mosquito, but on the spirit that resides within the blood, sucking out your soul and devouring all that you are. You mean to tell me that you haven't learned any of this?
Can't say I have.
What about hunters? You never heard of them either? Vile, low-life scumbags with nothing better to do than to hunt vampires? No? You never heard of the so-called legendary vampire hunter Nat Turner, said to be able to hunt and kill vampires with inconceivable skill and fearsome techniques? No?
Nope.
So basically, you've learned only the dullest, saddest, dumbest drivel that the morons of the world have dreamed up. And what is worse, you actually believe it. Let's take a look at this amazing collection of yours, shall we?
The vampire spun Leroy around in his chair so he faced the mantelpiece. She picked up the jar and unscrewed the top. Then, reaching in with her long, sharp claws, plucked the brown floating ball out of the vinegar inside. Putting it to her nose, she gave it a cautious sniff.
Let's see. Franz I's missing nose. My acute sense of smell can definitely say that this, even for the many years it has been smothered in vinegar, is certainly not of the flesh. I would say what we have here is most definitely a walnut. Let's taste it and find out. Definitely a walnut. Oh, by the way, that's another myth that vampires can't eat food. One of the highlights of being undead for so long is that I have had the privilege of sampling all types of delicacies from many countries over many years. It's just that every so often I've got to eat a human as well. Now then, let's see. What shall we look at next? Ah, yes, Yeti fur.
Smashing open the glass box with a sharp rap from her gnarled knuckles, she pulled out the small piece of long brownish fur.
Well, well, well. This piece of fur that you've got here is indeed most probably from Tibet. However, as anyone but yourself might guess, it's not the fur of the mysterious and non-existent Yeti. It's actually yak fur.
Placing the small piece of yak hair atop Leroy's head, Claudia gave a slight, guttural chuckle as she gazed down at the sad spectacle that Leroy presented.
Last, and probably least, we have this. Ectoplasm.
She said, holding up the tube with the white gooey liquid inside.
Paste. Made from seawater and flour.
Claudia seemed overcome with joy as she poured the gooey white liquid all over the top of Leroy's Yeti wig.
Now you really look as pathetic as you actually are. But don't worry. Soon I will snuff out your misery. Should we see what other precious junk you've collected? Where are the rest of them? Where is that Jesus buttocks thing?
In my bedroom. The chest at the foot of my bed.
The vampire darted off with frightening speed through the door. Seconds later, the creature sauntered back into the room carrying the chest under one arm. Leroy shook as the vampire stared, unblinking at him with unkind eyes. The creature took a firm hold of the old wooden chest lid and tore it off, nonchalantly tossing it to one side of her. She then gazed down at the contents. She pulled out a pair of white women's knickers and shook them at Leroy.
What's this? You have one or two secrets, perhaps, that you haven't told me about?
They belong to Lavinia Fisher. She murdered dozens of men at the 6 Mile Wayfarer house, a hotel owned by her and her husband John.
Boring.
Claudia drew a large grey convex disc that appeared to be carved from stone from a brown leather bag she pulled from the chest. The vampire opened her mouth, filling the room with an evil guttural laugh and the stench of rot.
The undead Jesus thing, I presume. I still can't believe that a grown man believes in all this rubbish. Are all niggers this dumb?
Mayhaps we is. Though I do find it hard to take criticism about my belief in the unexplainable from a goddamn vampire.
Look at you. The nigger has grown something of a backbone. You dare answer me back? Just for that, I'm going to tear out your...
The vampire stopped mid-sentence. She looked down at the grey dish she held. The hand holding the disc was starting to shake. Claudia opened her hand in an attempt to release the disc, but it was as if it were glued to her. The creature grabbed the disc with her free hand and tried prying it away. Both hands became glued to the disc. Pinkish white smoke billowed up from Claudia's clawed hands. Leroy slowly rose from his chair, pushing to the floor the still knotted ropes that once bound him. Smoke billowed from every orifice of Claudia's body and even from under her fingernails. A moment later, a pile of ashes lay on the floor where the vampire had stood. A few whiffs of smoke swelled up from the pile of blackness. On top of these ashes lay the great discarnate fundament of the undead Lord and Saviour. For a time, Leroy just stood, gazing at the ashes and the grey disc. He shrugged and then went about cleaning up the mess.
Apologies, Claudia. I forgot to give you my real name. That was very ungentlemanly of me. But my clients do pay me well for my discretion, as well as my skills. I am Nat Turner, pastor, freedom fighter, monster hunter.